Great. So my name's Dorcas Beaton, and I'm happy to be your moderator of this session, which is on empowering voices, patient engagement, driving progress in OMERACT. And you've heard already how OMERACT as an organization is committed to engaging patients. And in fact, we made that commitment formal in about 2002. So for over 20 of our 30 years of existence, we've made a commitment to engaging patients in our processes, in our decision-making, and in our methodology that we're doing. So today, many of us, as we're working in our working groups, sometimes struggle or are challenged by, well, how do we do that well? How do we know that we're doing that well? And how could we be doing it better? So today, we're very excited because we met a group of people who have thought a great deal about this. And they're going to be bringing their framework to us. And we're going to listen today to the patient research partners guiding us through a session on engagement and this new framework that may well be something that we think at OMERACT could be very useful to working groups and to us as an organization. So what we'd like to do first is I'd like to introduce Kathy Hofstetter, who you've met before as the chair of the patient support group, and I'd like to invite her up to do our first talk. Kathy.
Thank you very much. Can I have the next slide, please? Oh, I'll do it. So this patient engagement session is going to focus on the significance of patient research partner involvement in OMERACT. Since 2002, PRPs have been an integral part of OMERACT, contributing to the development of core outcome sets within each of the working groups. PRP participation includes co-developing protocols, co-authoring manuscripts, participating on committees, as well as in surveys and task forces, and providing the patient perspective and lived experience and activities at any and all stages that shape the OMERACT way. While PRPs are integrated within the majority of working groups, we are still not integrated into all working groups. And that must change in order to truly be the patient-centered organization that we proudly claim to be. The peer framework will help all working groups to engage PRPs in a sustainable and meaningful way, which will add value and relevance to their work. It will assure retention of our current PRPs and add strength to the working groups. Now, a good salesman always makes the ask, and we're asking today that all working groups, regardless of how long you have been engaging with PRPs, to listen, to consider, to embrace, and to integrate the peer framework within your groups.
Thank you, Kathy. And the observant among you will realize I'm not Ingrid. Unfortunately, as you heard earlier, Ingrid isn't very well today, so I'm standing in for her. But I am going to speak Ingrid's words. These aren't mine, so all credit to Ingrid for what I'm about to say. So, hello, everybody. My name is Ingrid de Groot, and I am the patient research partner for the myositis working group. Patient research partnerships is a key, and I just realized I haven't moved this on. Yep. Is that right? I don't know what the slides are. Okay, I'll just carry on. Excuse the boop, but here you go. Patient research partnership is a key feature of OMERACT, so we will start right at the beginning. What exactly is a PRP? A patient research partner is someone living with a relevant disease or condition who participates as an active team member on an equal basis with professional researchers, adding to the benefit of his or her experiential knowledge in research projects. So the first OMERACT conference was founded by Martin Boers in the Netherlands, Peter Brooks from Australia, Vibeke Strand, USA, and Peter Tugwell from Canada. And this was in 1992 and has met every 2 years since. Then, in 2000, at OMERACT 5, the researchers considered clinically important changes in response to treatment and so decided to seek patients' opinions about this. This resulted in 11 patients being invited to participate in OMERACT 6, which was in 2002, held in the beautiful Gold Coast, Australia. Not only did the researchers get the patient perspective on clinically important change, but also identified other research priorities. The story goes that during a casual discussion around the pool, the researchers asked what was important to patients. Among other things, the patients identified fatigue and sleep disturbance as a primary concern. This was the beginning of several research projects over the next 6 to 8 years on these subjects. From this beginning, patient involvement has evolved in OMERACT. In 2004, OMERACT 7 of Monterey, California, USA, implementation of a patient perspective in outcome research began. The patient's perspective was asked on topics of discussion at OMERACT meeting. At that time, this was very novel in the research world, and OMERACT has been a recognised leader in the engagement of patients in all critical levels of international rheumatology research ever since. So what exactly do patients bring to the table? Lived experience regarding the visible and invisible impact of the condition. Values regarding treatment and quality of life. Priorities regarding research and care. Perspective of living with their disease. And a really important one, courage and vulnerability. And we have some opportunities and challenges as well. As said before, OMERACT has been involving patients for over more than 20 years now, a novelty at that time then as well. Nowadays, patient involvement is more common practice, which is a good thing, but it also means that we, as OMERACT, have to take a closer look at where we stand exactly. Here in Colorado Springs, we will also focus on the future of OMERACT, and that means this is a good time to really concentrate on the opportunities and challenges regarding patient involvement. The key points for decision makers were published by Martin DeWitt et al., published in 2016. We will look at them together. And we'll give you a moment for you all to read those. So OMERACT has shown the long-term involvement of patients in research is beneficial for identifying and validating outcomes that matter to patients. Building the sustaining successful partnerships with patients require restructuring of the research process in investing time and budgets into training and support of patient research partners, or PRPs as we're known. The integration of qualitative and quantitative data, complemented by participation of PRPs, enhances the face validity of outcome research. Ensuring representativeness of the patient perspective for diagnosis, disease severity, and cultural, social, economic, and geographical diversity is still challenging. We will look at some facts and figures now. Since 2002, the first OMERACT to which patients were invited, there have been 10 in-person conferences and 1 virtual conference during the pandemic, which I think we probably all want to forget a little bit. In these, 171 patients were engaged, some of them one time only, but others for several or even many, many times, on average accounting for 10% of the participants of the in-person meeting. Our PRP network, we have a total number of patients in our PRP network now of 314, and they represent over a fantastic 25 countries and 6 continents. Not all PRPs attend a conference, but their contributions are still invaluable, and we can see here. The PRPs take part in working groups, sometimes even more than 1 or 2, depending on their experiential knowledge or affinity. Our network is also a very trustworthy partner in participating in Delphys and surveys. A recent impressive example is the pain survey we conducted. 121 PRPs responded in the blink of an eye. pointing out the power and impact of patient involvement. But I'll pop out the first one. The patient involvement process in OMERACT and the changes in OMERACT measurements and the use of them in the drug tests have made a real difference to so many patients. And I think that's why we're here, to really make a difference for people. I know that it's important to researchers from the medical side, but from the patient side, this is what's really important to me. So how do we meet in the middle? And that came from a patient from Canada. And the patient perspective opens up the whole realm of things that we haven't looked at. And that's a great quote from a rheumatologist in the US. And patient research partnership is a game of give and take. And I love this. We give our time and energy to our group or our project, and we take back energy from the esteemed groups of researchers we work with. We give our various skills and expertise from a variety of backgrounds and life experiences, and we take the setting and opportunity to apply these skills. We give our perspectives and opinions, sometimes asked for and sometimes not. That's a pretty important one too. And take the chance to be mentored by others as well. We give volunteer hours and take that healing benefit of feeling empowered to control our disease and our environment around our disease. And I absolutely love that last section. Really sums it up for us. So now I am going to be quiet and hand back to Kathy. Thank you, everybody.
I have to thank Mary, because we had a PRP team meeting this morning, and I walked in and I said to Mary, Ingrid's out. And without missing a beat or taking a breath, Mary just said, as she got notes, I'll take over. So, crazy. So, where do we go from here? For the last 21 years, OMERACT has embraced the engagement of PRPs, but we have yet to clearly articulate the nature of that engagement, nor have we measured the effectiveness and impact of that engagement. We belong to OMERACT, and OMERACT is about measuring outcomes, yet we have never measured the outcome of engaging PRPs. We think we're doing a great job of engaging patients as PRPs, but how do we know that if we're not measuring it? What are we doing well? What could we be doing better? And are there gaps in how the PRPs are engaged within the different working groups? The PRP support team has been working really hard over the last 2.5 years to provide the resources our PRPs need to be effectively engaged in OMERACT. Now, if COVID and virtual OMERACT 2020 taught us anything, it's that there are a lot of patients in our collective networks that want to be engaged with OMERACT. In looking to the future, we want to focus on refining and expanding the PRP group, retaining the PRPs that are engaged with us now, and recruit more of these eager PRPs from diverse backgrounds, lived experiences, and skill sets to add value to our work with OMERACT. This afternoon, we're going to introduce a framework to support successful patient engagement and a scale to finally measure that effectiveness. I'm really delighted to say that Dr. Cleon Hamilton is joining us today from the University of British Columbia, who will give us an overview of the patient engagement and research, the peer framework and scale, and then we'll all have an opportunity to engage in an interactive model from the peer framework, as well as a section of the peer scale. This is an opportunity to share thoughts and discuss potential ways of using the peer framework and Peers 22 to effectively and meaningfully engage patients in OMERACT research. We will all gain valuable insights into practical tools for incorporating patient perspectives into OMERACT research, ultimately leading to more meaningful and impactful research outcomes for patients. Dr. Cleon Hamilton.
Thank you, Kathy. Am I too loud? Just about right? Thank you. It's great to see everyone here. Today, I'm delighted to be joining you, and it's great to be in a room where people appreciate and value patient research partners. And so here at OMERACT, it's because you see how it makes things better and how it can have an impact on research. So over the next about 10 minutes, I will share some tools we developed through our research to support successful and meaningful patient engagement in research. And so specifically, I will introduce the patient engagement in research framework, or the peer framework for short. And then I will share a workbook that helps the implementation of the peer framework. And I will end with touching on, now that patient research partners are being engaged at OMERACT, how the peers, or what's the scale, can be used for evaluating an ongoing improvement of PRP's experience. And so peer framework emerged from the experiences of patient research partners at Arthritis Research Canada, and published research up to that point when we started in 2015 with this work, making it broadly applicable beyond the groups of people with specific health condition. Our team, primarily of 2 researchers and 4 patient partners with arthritic conditions, worked closely to co-build and publish the peer framework. The peer framework is an illustration of 8 key components that collectively define concept of meaningful patient engagement in research as the planned, supported, and valued involvement of patients or their surrogates, such as their family member, parent, friends, in the research process, which facilitates their contributions and offer a rewarding experience. The peer framework was designed to support how we plan, undertake, and evaluate meaningful engagement of patient partners, and has so far been used to fulfill each of these purposes, and have been published on for each of these purposes. The 8 components of the framework, as you can see here on the slides, starting from the top to the bottom, are procedural requirements, convenience, contributions, research, environment, team interactions, support, feel valued, and benefits. I won't go into describing each of these components. What I will do is to touch on one as an example. So feel valued focuses on approaches to ensure patient research partners feel equally important on the team through appreciation, recognizing their contribution and respect. It's not enough to include patients as part of research team or working group. Highly meaningful experiences give confidence that the voices of patients help to shape a project to match their views, their needs, wants, values, circumstances. We created the Peer Plan workbook to help members of groups that include patient research partners plan how they will work well together. It can be used flexibly and ask probing questions of group conversations to address each of the key components of meaningful patient engagement within a group plan, to create a group plan, or what's called a peer plan. And so in a few minutes, Alison will provide us with some insights on how to use the peer plan workbook. And so OMERACT is engaging patient research partners. How do we learn from what's going well and what can be improved? This is where the peers 22 or the scale comes in to help individuals, groups, organizations assess and improve on meaningful engagement from the perspectives of patient research partners. And so developed through a combination of qualitative and quantitative research, the peers 22 validation enables users to be confident it comprehensively measures meaningful engagement, producing results that can be consistently interpreted as accurate insights and used to action change. And I think that is very important, that you have consistent interpretation of what you're getting, that it's accurate, and that what you get from it can be, sorry, I think I should be advancing this slide here. What you get from it can lead to change. And so the peers 22 contains 22 items or statements that capture patient research partners' perspectives on the extent to which they were meaningfully engaged. These statements can map across all 8 components of the peer framework and enable nuanced insights into their experiences. And so here is an example. Here we go. Here we see 2 statements, and these 2 statements tap into the feel-valued component of meaningful patient engagement. And so they are designed to maximize the extent to which we capture the overall idea of feel-valued, but are in and of themselves key elements of meaningful engagement. And so we see the first one here, FV1. The research project team appreciated my contributions. Patient research partner, the peers 22 total scores can vary between 0 and 100 and can be interpreted across 4 ranges to mean patient research partners' experiences were overall low in meaningfulness or extremely meaningful. So low degrees of meaningful engagement, that's shown in red, and you can keep note of the different colors there. So the red indicates important gaps in patient partners' experiences of meaningful engagement. Low degree of meaningfulness corresponds to the peers 22 total scores of below 70%. So from our work, we also identified that certain aspects of meaningful engagement captured by each of the 22 statements are greater contributions to the foundational, intermediate, and advanced levels of meaningful patient engagement in research. So these levels of meaningfulness are different from the degrees of meaningfulness. And so the levels focus on the elements of meaningful engagement that are typically define the experience of patient research partners at that level. On the other hand, degrees of meaningfulness is sensitive to the variations in the overall elements that contribute into the experiences of patient partners. And I can answer a question about that afterwards. And so I will now quickly present a case study on how the peers 22 can be used to evaluate and improve patient engagement. So the peers, the SPORE Evidence Alliance is a Canadian-wide multi-stakeholder health research initiative providing national level support in knowledge synthesis, clinical practice guidelines development, and knowledge translation. In a recent publication on a self-study led by Dr. Linda Lee, who was my supervisor, postdoc supervisor at the time of developing the peers, led the study that where the Alliance reflect on patient engagement in the initiative's first 3 years of operation. 15 patient partners of the Alliance completed the Peers 22 anonymously. So that's the slide of the publication from the self-study. And here are the scores of the 15 patient partners. And you can see that they varied in their overall level of meaningfulness. And there were certain key components of meaningful engagement shown by the red bars that needed attention. Okay. And so within the top 4 components that needed attention, we identified 8 items that underpin low meaningfulness. 20% or more of patient partners selected neutral or disagree with reporting their experience for certain or 8 items. So these 8 items shown on the screen. The 8 items fall within the intermediate and advanced levels of meaningful engagement. And so what this tells us is that the foundational aspects of meaningful engagement were being met. And so they have covered the basic stuff. And so we summarized the data and shared it back to the patient partners of the Alliance. In a 3-hour virtual workshop, patient partners beyond the 15 patient partners who completed the peers and researchers dialogued about how the Alliance could address the experiences captured by each of the 8 items. They came up with 28 initial recommendations, which they voted on, resulting in 14 recommendations for use in ongoing improvements of meaningful engagement at the Alliance. And I should add that this paper was accepted this morning, the case study I'm presenting, to be published at Journal of Clinical Epidemiology. So it is sort of a methods paper that is showing how we can evaluate and improve patient engagement in research. So you're going to be at the forefront in implementing and doing this. And so the 14 recommendations are organized in 4 categories. Here you see 2 categories on the slide. So setting expectations for all team members. So setting expectation is crucial. Building trust and ongoing communication. So it's about relationships, right? Patient engagement and working together. So the participants also recognized some of the concerns were already being met or addressed, and so we decided to organize the recommendations as a task board. And in organizing it this way, we recognize that some things are being worked on, some things are to be done, and some things are being addressed now. And the other 2 recommendations here, sets of recommendations, fell into the category of providing opportunities to enhance learning and to develop skills. And finally, to acknowledge the contributions of the patient partners. So now that we have, now we'll have the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the peer framework in this workshop. And we have the pleasure of introducing Alison Owens, who is an active member of OMERACT and an experienced knowledge broker from the University of British Columbia. Alison also was part of the original peer team, and she will take us through an exercise that will help us in using the peer framework. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I always find it so amazing when you can encapsulate years of work into a 10 to 15 minute presentation, hitting highlights, not providing the incredible amount of work that went into that entire process. So kudos to Dr. Hamilton and the support that he provided the entire team and continues with this work with the peers framework. So my job here today is to let you have a little bit of hands-on experience with the peers. And as you see, there were 8 domains. And you can't possibly work through all 8 domains in a short period of time, but it's like going to a smorgasbord and just picking out a little bit and giving it a try. So that's what we're going to do today. The workbook is available at this website. And what you need to know about the workbook is it looks like a lot of pages. But the good news is you only use what seems relevant for you to use. You don't have to complete all of it. You could be having components within your working groups or within the organization that are going very well, and therefore, why undertake that part of the workbook? It really is you get to pick and choose what the components together with, and when I say you, I meant the entire team. So the patient research partners together with the researchers. So the example that we're going to look at today, you'll see on the table in front of you, is the feel valued. And let's just take a closer look at what feel valued is defined as. It focuses on ensuring that patients and researchers feel equally valued on the research project team by ensuring everyone receives appropriate recognition and respect. Okay. And the recognition is the key word here, as well as respect. So the activity, when you open up the workbook, it says, discuss preferred options for recognizing patient partner contributions. Now you see it says preferred options. So compensation doesn't always have to mean monetary compensation. People can feel valued and feel they're being compensated by a whole host of things that you might not even consider. So on teams that I've worked with, it's been from everything getting a screen for the computer, for the laptop, so the glare doesn't irritate the eyes for one particular individual. It might be a gift card. Often in some countries, if patients are only allowed, they're on disability and they're only allowed to have so much income, additional income, that getting payment, compensation for that could jeopardize that disability. So it might be something like a gift card for a grocery store. It could be paying for attendance at a conference. There's a number of ways that the patients could individually be feeling valued. It might be helping being co-authoring on publications or honoraria. It could be after you've collected all those ideas, it's important to sit down, revisit that with people, and discuss ways to address it. And it's also recognizing actions and behaviors that need to be avoided. So often what comes up in these discussions is patient research partners. This gives a validation for an opportunity to share the things that are going well, as well as the things that could be improved. And understanding that there's a whole range of options that might be appropriate for given individuals. So a couple of just gentle reminders before we jump into this task. Number one, compensation is different than reimbursement. Reimbursement is like paying mileage to get to attend the meeting, or in the PAIRS framework, it's under the domain of support. So recognize that compensation is on top of reimbursement, and that could be publication too. So it doesn't all have to be financial. It's important to address this proactively rather than reactively. We all know that for researchers, when you're creating that budget for your project grant, that you have to itemize those line items for every component. Wouldn't it be nice to know at the beginning, before you've submitted that grant application, what that compensation would look like, so that that's budgeted for appropriately in that project grant? And the other thing is to be open to those options rather than prescriptive. So rather than saying that the compensation would look the same for all patient partners, it should be individually conceived of individually. So what you have in front of you on the table is the definition of feel valued. Now your task within your table is to look at that and start to have just a brief exploratory conversation about different options of how feel valued could be actuated within a working group. Okay, so we're going to take the time to do that now. How many minutes do we have for that? 15 minutes. Okay. The question is, how often is it recommended? Dr. Hamilton?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. At the core of it, it's planning how you're working together, right? And so if a new member comes on the team, for example, are there some kind of situational change? You're going from virtual to, or from in-person to virtual, like those are important change. So it's a living document, right, that you're creating. You're creating a plan. There are certain aspects of the plan that can be changed based on changing situations. Yeah.
Another potential thing to think about with that is if you're reporting on your patient engagement, because your funding is associated with your patient engagement. So you might want to report midterm and completion of project, for example. So that's another consideration. Yes, your question.
Our lovely Shauna has created an onboarding package for any new PRP. So when you can go in there and get all the e-learning modules, you can get all kinds of information that pertains to how you work within your working group. Not, oh yeah, you mean like don't scare them away. Don't, yeah. Yeah, that's a really good idea to have, and I think we need to develop that for sure. Especially since we're trying to bring in, some new PRPs that have indicated some wish to be engaged.
Okay, and the last thing to address, there was a question at the back of how do you use this workbook and how do you use the scale? I have seen it used two different combinations of ways. First of all, the workbook being used right at the beginning of the project, where, and if you're in the luxury that you're just starting your working group, that's an ideal time to do that. And with the patient partners identify, not go through all 8 domains, maybe a process to identify the top 3 that would like to be the focus of the first year working together, for example. So you would start with the workbook. You wouldn't start with the scale, evaluating their experience. I have also seen it being used the opposite way, where the scale is used first. And then you saw when Dr. Hamilton showed the slide of what the scores were, where there were low scores, red scores, going back to the questions in the workbook to start to identify the strategies and the interventions to improve those areas that scored low. You want to add in?
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Okay.
That's wonderful.
So then in the rest of the workbook, again, there's optional sections, appendices that the patient partners said would be very useful, and project managers on projects said would be very useful to have to document these. So first of all, to document which of the domains there were the priorities and what the strategies were, and then a roles and responsibilities document. So again, these are just optional. It's a workbook, you get to choose. And then your work plan, who's doing what, when, etc. And I'd just like to close this session from the perspective of using these tools. That Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And, you know, this is not just about patient partners, it's about the entire feeling within the whole team. The researchers, the patient partners, clinicians, anybody else that you have working on the team.
Yeah, that actually, when we just developed the peer framework, and we presented to a very well-known implementation scientist, when he looked at the domains or the components, what he said to us was, this is about teamwork. It's valuable to all members on the team. So it's not just about the patient research partners.